The calculated arrangement. Harrison Reed adjusted his platinum cufflinks as he gazed out the window of his penthouse suite. Below, Manhattan sparkled like the $50,000 chandelier that would hang above him in 3 hours when he said, "I do," to a woman he respected but didn't love. The market responded well to the announcement, his assistant Julian remarked, sliding a tablet across the marble countertop. "Your company's stock is up 12 points this morning." Harrison nodded, satisfied. "And Thornton Technologies?" "Up 17. Mr. Thornton is pleased." Of course he was. Richard Thornton had engineered this entire arrangement, the marriage of his daughter Vanessa to Harrison, merging two tech empires that would dominate the industry for decades. It was the smartest business move either family could make. "Your eye." "Mother called again," Julian added. "She wanted to remind you about the photographer's request for family portraits before the ceremony." Harrison sighed. "Tell her I'll be there." "And Julian?" "Make sure the prenup documents are secured in my private safe, not the office." Outside the luxurious hotel venue, June Foster tucked a strand of auburn hair behind her ear as she checked items off her clipboard. As the lead coordinator for elite events, she'd organized dozens of high-profile weddings, but the Reed-Thornton nuptials were on another level entirely. "The East Garden arrangements need to be refreshed," she instructed one of her staff. "And please remind the string quartet that Mr. Reed specifically requested no Pachelbel canon during the reception." "Ms. Foster?" a voice called from behind. June turned to see Vanessa Thornton, resplendent in her couture gown, looking surprisingly calm for a bride on her wedding day. "Is everything all right, Ms. Thornton?" June asked. Vanessa's perfectly made-up face revealed nothing. "Just checking that the press will be kept behind the designated barriers. My father insists on coverage, but Harrison prefers discretion." "Absolutely. We have extra security positioned throughout the perimeter." Vanessa nodded. "Good. This merger," she caught herself. "This marriage needs to project the right image." June had worked enough society weddings to recognize the signs. Another union built on everything but love. Still, it wasn't her place to judge. "Everything will be flawless," June assured her. Later, as guests filled the grand ballroom, June observed Harrison from the sidelines. Despite his commanding presence in his tailored tuxedo, something about his eyes seemed distant, almost melancholy. The ceremony proceeded with military precision. When Harrison recited his vows, his voice was strong and clear, but June noticed how his words lacked the tremor of emotion she'd witnessed in genuinely love-struck grooms. At the reception, while checking on the catering staff, June accidentally bumped into Harrison at the edge of the dance floor. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Reed," she apologized, steadying herself. "My fault entirely," he replied, his hand briefly touching her elbow. For a moment, their eyes met, and June was startled by the flash of genuine warmth in his gaze. The first real emotion she'd seen from him all day. "Congratulations on your marriage," she offered. Something flickered across his face. "Thank you for ensuring everything ran smoothly, Ms. Foster." "June Foster." "June," he repeated, as if testing the name. "In a day filled with artifice, your efficiency feels refreshingly authentic." Before she could respond, Richard Thornton appeared, clapping Harrison on the shoulder. "There's my son-in-law. The Japanese investors are eager to meet you both." Harrison's mask slid back into place. "Duty calls," he said to June with a slight bow. "But I appreciate your work today." As he walked away, June couldn't help but wonder about the man beneath the perfectly tailored suit, and why, on his wedding day, the only genuine smile she'd seen from him had been directed at her, a woman he'd just met. Chance encounters. 3 months after the wedding, June hunched over her laptop in West Side Coffee, a small cafe tucked away from Manhattan's bustling avenues. Rain pelted the windows, creating a cozy atmosphere despite the dreary October weather. This was her sanctuary, a place to escape the glamorous but exhausting world of elite event planning. "Is this seat taken?" June looked up, startled to see Harrison Reed standing beside her table, raindrops clinging to his cashmere coat. Gone was the perfectly polished groom. Today he looked almost approachable in casual business attire, his dark hair slightly tousled from the rain. "Mr. Reed," she said, surprised. "No, please sit." "Harrison," he corrected, sliding into the chair opposite her. "Mr. Reed makes me feel like my father." A barista approached, and Harrison ordered black coffee. June noticed he didn't carry the entitled air of most wealthy clients. No special requests, no complaints about the modest surroundings. "I didn't expect to see you here," June said. "This isn't exactly the Reed Thornton social circuit." A hint of a smile touched his lips. "That's precisely why I come. Sometimes I need to remember what real life looks like." He gestured to her laptop. "Working on another extravagant event?" "A charity gala for the Children's Hospital," she replied, "though not nearly as elaborate as your wedding." "Thank goodness for small mercies," he murmured. June raised an eyebrow. Most grooms don't sound relieved when their wedding is mentioned. Harrison studied her for a moment as if deciding whether she could be trusted. "Most grooms marry for different reasons than I did." The honesty in his statement caught her off guard. Before she could respond, Harrison changed the subject, asking about her work. Their conversation flowed surprisingly easily, touching on everything from event disasters to their favorite hidden spots in the city. For nearly an hour, June forgot. She was speaking to one of New York's most powerful businessmen. "You're not what I expected," Harrison finally said, finishing his second cup of coffee. "What did you expect?" "Someone more impressed by wealth." His eyes met hers. "You treat me like a normal person." June shrugged. "In my experience, the size of someone's bank account rarely correlates with the size of their character." Harrison laughed, a genuine sound that transformed his usually serious face. "That's refreshingly blunt." Their chance meeting became a pattern. Every few weeks they'd encounter each other at the coffee shop, sometimes discussing business, other times debating books or films. June learned that beneath Harrison's calculated exterior lay a mind hungry for authentic connection. He seemed to value their conversations precisely because she had no agenda with him. During one December meeting, Harrison arrived looking unusually tense. "Bad day?" June asked, as he slumped into his chair. "Bad month," he corrected. "The Thornton merger isn't proceeding as smoothly as expected. Richard is pushing for control of divisions we never discussed relinquishing." "And Vanessa?" Harrison's expression hardened. "Firmly in her father's camp. Apparently that was part of the arrangement all along." He rubbed his temples. "I should have seen it coming." June hesitated, then asked softly, "Why did you agree to the marriage, Harrison?" His eyes met hers, vulnerability momentarily visible. "My father built Reed Technologies from nothing. When he died, I promised to secure his legacy. This merger guaranteed that. At the cost of your personal happiness?" "Happiness wasn't a consideration," he said flatly. "It was a business decision." "And now?" Harrison's phone buzzed with a message. Reading it, his expression closed off again. "And now I have a board meeting to attend." He stood, dropping cash on the table. "I've kept you too long." "You haven't," June said. "Actually, She hesitated, then pulled out an envelope. "I'm coordinating a small gallery opening tomorrow night. Local artist, nothing fancy. If you want to see how the other half lives." Harrison took the invitation, studying it before carefully placing it in his pocket. "I'll try," he said, though his tone suggested otherwise. The next evening, June had almost forgotten about the invitation when she spotted a familiar figure examining a vibrant abstract painting in the corner of the gallery. Harrison had traded his usual business attire for dark jeans and a simple button-down shirt. When their eyes met across the room, something shifted between them, something neither was prepared to acknowledge, but that both could feel taking root, in the space where their separate worlds had unexpectedly begun to overlap. Falling through the cracks, February winds howled outside the glass walls of Harrison's office on the 48th floor. Inside, the tension was equally fierce as he faced Richard Thornton across the conference table. "This wasn't our agreement," Harrison said, keeping his voice measured despite his anger. "You're attempting to restructure the entire R&D division without board approval." Richard's smile never reached his cold eyes. The agreement was that our families would unite for mutual benefit. Vanessa and I simply interpret that benefit differently than you do. And where is my wife during this discussion? Harrison asked, emphasizing the last word with subtle bitterness. Paris Fashion Week, Richard replied dismissively. She trusts my judgment in these matters. After Thornton left, Harrison stood at the window, watching snowflakes swirl between skyscrapers. His marriage had devolved into occasional public appearances and separate bedrooms within 6 months. The business alliance was following a similar trajectory. What had seemed like a brilliant strategy was revealing itself as a sophisticated trap. His phone chimed with a message from June. Gallery showing new installation tonight. Thought you might appreciate a momentary escape from corporate warfare. Harrison smiled for the first time that day. Their accidental meetings had evolved into a genuine friendship over the past months. June had become his window into a world, unburdened by shareholder expectations and dynasty building, a world where people created and connected for reasons beyond profit. That evening, as they wandered through the small gallery, June noticed Harrison's distraction. "You're a million miles away," she said, handing him a plastic cup of mediocre wine. "Try 48 floors," he replied with a weak smile. "Sorry, difficult day." June studied him thoughtfully. "You know what you need? Real food, not these tiny gallery appetizers. There's a hole-in-the-wall Ukrainian place around the corner that will make you forget corporate America exists." The restaurant was cramped and noisy, with mismatched furniture and faded photographs covering the walls. Harrison looked comically out of place in his tailored suit, but as they shared plates of hearty food, the tension visibly drained from his shoulders. "My father would have loved this place," he said unexpectedly, dipping dark bread into a rich stew. "Tell me about him," June prompted. Harrison rarely spoke about personal matters, but tonight the words flowed freely. He described his father's journey from factory worker to tech innovator, his mother's unwavering support, and the pressure he felt to honor their sacrifices. They had a real marriage, he concluded quietly. Even when they disagreed, there was respect, partnership. "I thought I could succeed without that business was enough." June's hand moved unconsciously toward his, but stopped short. "And now?" His eyes met hers. "Now I'm not sure what success even means anymore." As weeks passed, Harrison found himself inventing reasons to seek June's company. They explored hidden corners of the city together. Community gardens, underground, jazz clubs, neighborhood festivals, places where Harrison could briefly escape the suffocating weight of his surname. March brought an unexpected crisis when a profile of New York's most influential power couples featured Harrison and Vanessa, with candid photos of their separate lives, Vanessa at European parties with other men, Harrison looking decidedly unbusinesslike with an unidentified redhead at a street fair. "The board is concerned," Julian informed him, displaying the article. "And the Thorntons are furious." "Let them be," Harrison replied, surprising himself with his indifference. That night, as rain pounded against the windows of his penthouse, Harrison realized he hadn't actually spoken to his wife in weeks. When he called, Vanessa answered with obvious irritation. "Who is she?" she demanded without preamble. "A friend," Harrison replied, "though that's hardly relevant considering the company you've been keeping in Monaco." Vanessa laughed coldly. "Don't be naive, Harrison. We both knew what this marriage was. The difference is I'm discreet about my indiscretions. You're developing feelings." The accusation hung between them because he couldn't deny it. Something had shifted fundamentally in his worldview, and at the center of that shift was June, with her unimpressed honesty and the way she saw past his carefully constructed facade. "We need to discuss our arrangement," he finally said. "Indeed we do," Vanessa replied. "Father wants an emergency board meeting tomorrow. Your little distraction is threatening the merger." After hanging up, Harrison made another call. "Can we meet?" he asked when June answered. "I need to talk to someone who still remembers who I was before I became a balance sheet." Hours later, sitting on a bench in the deserted park near June's apartment, Harrison confessed everything. the coldness of his marriage, the trap he'd willingly walked into, and how his time with her had become the only honest part of his life. Ystuho built an empire on calculated decisions, he said, rain dripping from his hair. But I never calculated for you. As June looked at him, really looked at the man beneath the wealth and status, she recognized the dangerous territory they were entering. She'd spent her career orchestrating perfect moments for other people, while keeping a safe distance from messy emotions herself. Harrison, she whispered, her voice nearly lost in the rain. What exactly are we doing here? The question hung between them, both knowing there was no simple answer, only complicated consequences neither was prepared to face. The price of truth. The Reed Technologies boardroom, with its gleaming mahogany table and floor-to-ceiling windows, had witnessed countless power plays over the years. Today, it hosted the most consequential confrontation of Harrison's career. These photos are troubling, said Eleanor Winters, the company's longest-serving board member, sliding a manila folder across the table. Inside were surveillance-quality images. Harrison and June walking through Central Park, sharing dinner at an obscure Vietnamese restaurant, standing too close at a gallery opening. Harrison maintained his composure, though inwardly he seethed at the invasion. I wasn't aware my personal friendships required board approval, Richard Thornton scoffed. When those friendships threaten a multi-billion-dollar merger, they absolutely do. This event coordinator, her name is June Foster, Harrison interrupted sharply, is becoming a liability, Richard continued as if Harrison hadn't spoken. Investors are questioning your commitment to the partnership our families established. Vanessa, seated beside her father, examined her manicure with practiced indifference. We agreed to present a united front, Harrison. That was the arrangement. An arrangement built on paper, not trust, Harrison replied. Much like how your father's promising to honor Reed Technologies' autonomy was apparently just words. The tension in the room thickened. Several board members shifted uncomfortably. What exactly are you implying? Richard demanded. Harrison opened his laptop, projecting an email chain onto the wall screen. These communications between Thornton Technologies and our Chinese manufacturers, bypassing our established supply chain protocols. You've been systematically undermining our operations while consolidating control. A murmur spread through the room. Harrison had spent weeks gathering evidence, assisted by loyal employees who'd noticed the irregularities. A simple reorganization for efficiency, Richard dismissed, though his confidence wavered. Interesting that these efficiencies all benefit Thornton Holdings at Reed's expense, Harrison countered. If my personal life concerns this board, perhaps these business practices should concern them more. Eleanor Winters studied Harrison thoughtfully. What exactly do you want, Harrison? The question hung in the air. 6 months ago, the answer would have been simple. Protect the company, secure the merger, fulfill his obligations. Now he wasn't certain. Time, he finally said. 48 hours to present a restructuring proposal that truly benefits both companies, or an exit strategy that protects Reed Technologies' core assets. After a tense vote, the board granted his request, though Richard stormed out without comment. Vanessa lingered behind. I never expected you to develop a spine, she remarked almost appreciatively. Is she worth it? This June person? Harrison met his wife's gaze directly. This isn't about June. It's about recognizing what I've become and deciding if that's who I want to be. Vanessa's perfect facade cracked slightly. We could have been a formidable team if you'd actually tried. Perhaps, Harrison conceded, but we would still have been performing, not living. Outside the building, rain had given way to weak April sunshine. Harrison texted June. Need to talk. Not at our usual places. Too many eyes watching. They met at the Botanical Garden in Brooklyn, walking among early spring blooms. Harrison explained the morning's confrontation, the surveillance, the ultimatum he faced. They've been watching us? June asked, visibly shaken. That's disturbing on multiple levels. Welcome to my world, Harrison said grimly. Everything is leverage. Everyone an asset or liability. June stopped walking. Is that what I am? A liability? To them, yes. Harrison turned to face her. To me, you're the only person who makes me question whether the life I've built is actually worth living. That's a lot of pressure to put on a friendship, June said carefully. Harrison ran a hand through his hair in frustration. Is that what this is? Just friendship? The question hung between them. June looked away, focusing on a nearby cherry tree beginning to blossom. I've spent my career orchestrating perfect moments for people who can afford them, she finally said. I know exactly how these stories are supposed to go. Wealthy man in loveless marriage meets ordinary woman who sees the real him. It's a fantasy, Harrison. Don't diminish what's happening here, he said quietly. Yes, my marriage was a business decision. Yes, meeting you changed my perspective. But this isn't about wealth or status. It's about finally finding someone who expects me to be better than my balance sheet suggests. June's eyes glistened with unshed tears. And what happens when reality sets in? You have a company to run, a marriage contract probably reinforced, with ironclad prenuptial agreements and a life that exists in a completely different stratosphere from mine. Those are logistics, not impossibilities, Harrison argued. They're not just logistics to me, June countered. You might lose some money and power. I could lose my professional reputation, my career. Elite Events caters to the same social circles you inhabit. If I'm branded as the woman who interfered in the Reed-Thornton merger, Harrison hadn't considered this angle. In his privileged position, even failure came with golden parachutes. June had no such protection. I would never let that happen, he promised. You might not be able to stop it. June's voice softened. Harrison, I care about you. More than I should, probably. But I won't be the excuse you use to blow up your life without a real plan. As they parted ways, Harrison felt a clarity he hadn't experienced in years. The choice before him wasn't simply about business strategy or even about his feelings for June. It was about what kind of man he wanted to be. One who accepted the path laid out by expectation and advantage, or one who had the courage to chart his own course, whatever the cost. That night, alone in his penthouse office, Harrison began drafting 2 documents, a business restructuring proposal that would protect Reed Technologies while disentangling it from the Thorntons' manipulations, and a personal letter that would forever alter the carefully constructed life he had built. By dawn, both were complete. The price of truth would be steep, but for the first time in his adult life, Harrison Reed was prepared to pay it. Rewriting the Vows golden light spilled through the windows of Harrison's childhood home in Connecticut, casting long shadows across the garden where he sat with his mother, Charlotte Reed. The sprawling property had always felt more like a showpiece than a home, but today its quiet seclusion provided exactly what he needed. I never thought I'd see the day, Charlotte said, sipping her tea. The merger your father worked toward for years undone in a matter of weeks. Not undone, Harrison corrected. Transformed. Reed Technologies remains intact, stronger even. We've just chosen a different path forward. The previous weeks had unfolded with the intensity of a corporate thriller. Harrison's restructuring proposal had revealed the extent of the Thorntons' attempted takeover, rallying the board to his side. The resulting agreement maintained strategic partnerships between the companies, but severed the deeper entanglements that threatened Reed's independence. And your marriage? Charlotte asked directly. Harrison's divorce proceedings had begun quietly with surprisingly little resistance from Vanessa. The prenuptial agreement he'd insisted upon, ironically to protect company assets, now facilitated a clean separation. Vanessa seems relieved, honestly, Harrison replied. She's already been photographed in Saint-Tropez with a Brazilian racing driver. Charlotte studied her son's face. And you seem lighter than I've seen you in years. She hesitated. Does that have anything to do with the young woman Richard Thornton was so concerned about? Harrison smiled faintly. June helped me see things clearly, but this decision was about more than her. It was about recognizing that I'd been measuring success by metrics that didn't actually matter to me. Your father would be proud, Charlotte said unexpectedly, not of the broken merger. That would have infuriated him. But of you finding your own definition of legacy. Harrison hadn't expected her support. Even though it's costing the family millions? Money comes and goes, she replied with surprising wisdom. Integrity is harder to recover once compromised. Speaking of which, she nodded toward the driveway. I believe you have a visitor. June's vintage Volvo looked charmingly out of place among the manicured grounds. Harrison hadn't seen her in nearly 3 weeks. His decision, as he wanted to handle the business and personal transitions without complicating matters further. She stepped out of the car, dressed simply in jeans and a blue blouse that matched her eyes. Her expression was guarded as he approached. Your assistant Julian told me where to find you, she explained. I hope that's okay. More than okay, Harrison assured her. I've missed you. They walked through the gardens in awkward silence until June finally spoke. I've been following the business news. Congratulations on retaining control of your company. Thank you, it's been eventful. And your divorce is proceeding? Harrison nodded. Vanessa and I have reached an amicable agreement. It turns out neither of us was particularly invested in the marriage itself. June stopped walking. Harrison, I need to know something. All these changes you're making, are they because of what happened between us? Because I never wanted to be responsible for... They're because of me, he interrupted gently. You showed me a door, June, but I chose to walk through it. For the first time in my life, I'm making decisions based on what I actually want, not what I'm expected to want. And what do you want? She asked softly. Instead of answering immediately, Harrison led her to a stone bench overlooking a small pond. When I was 12, my father took me fishing at this pond. I caught nothing all day, but he caught a beautiful rainbow trout. He could have kept it. It was a perfect specimen, but he released it. When I asked why, he said, some things are worth more swimming free than possessed. I didn't understand then. June smiled. And now? Now I understand he was talking about more than fish. Harrison took her hand. I've spent my life accumulating wealth, power, connections without asking why. These past months with you, I've experienced something that can't be acquired or possessed. It can only be shared, freely given. That sounds suspiciously like a romantic notion from a man who claimed to be all about business decisions. June teased, though her eyes were serious. I'm learning, Harrison admitted. Slowly, imperfectly. But I know this. I don't want to go back to the person I was before I met you. June's expression softened. I don't want you to either. That guy was kind of a jerk. They both laughed, the tension finally breaking between them. I'm not asking for promises, Harrison continued. I know there's still a significant imbalance between our worlds, but I'd like the chance to see what might be possible between us, without prenuptial agreements or strategic advantages. Just two people figuring it out together. June considered his words. I have conditions, she finally said. Name them. First, I keep my job. No offers to set me up in my own company or make me an executive at Reed Technologies. What I do matters to me. Harrison nodded. Agreed. Second, we take this slowly. Real relationships aren't built in grand gestures or dramatic declarations. Also, fair, he acknowledged. And third, June's voice softened. You have to promise to keep showing me who you really are, not who you think I want you to be. The man beneath the empire is the one I'm interested in knowing. Harrison gently squeezed her hand. Those aren't conditions, June. They're vows I'd be honored to make. As the sun began to set over the Connecticut countryside, Harrison Reed, the man who had once spoken empty promises for the sake of business, found himself making new vows that finally held the weight of truth. Not in front of hundreds of spectators under crystal chandeliers, but to one woman on a simple stone bench with no witnesses except the changing leaves and the rainbow trout swimming freely in the pond below. In the months that followed, Harrison reformed Reed Technologies with a focus on sustainable innovation rather than market domination. June continued building her event planning business, occasionally using her expertise to help Reed's charitable foundation create meaningful community events rather than ostentatious galas. Their relationship progressed naturally, without the artificial timeline of arranged connections. They learned each other's flaws and strengths, argued and reconciled, and gradually built something neither had experienced before, a partnership based not on what either could gain, but on who they became together. 1 year later, at the same park bench where they had once nearly said goodbye, Harrison proposed with a simple question. Would you help me spend the rest of my life remembering what matters most? June's answer required no calculation, no strategic analysis, just the simple truth that sometimes the most valuable contracts are the ones written not on paper, but on the heart.